Hello, everybody, and welcome in live to the first edition of the Horns Haven Show right here on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football on the SEC channel. Please hit that like button and subscribe, and go over to the Big 12 channel, the Texas channel, and hit that big like button and subscribe as well. I really appreciate you guys being here. This is the first edition. We are rebranding instead of Bleeding Burnt Orange. It's Horns Haven from here on out, and from here on out, guys, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time Monday. Trying to grow this brand, trying to grow this channel. Mark will also be joining us in April, so please hit the like button and subscribe to stay tuned for that. And welcome into the first edition of that. And while you're here, go over to ticketsmarter.com for all your purchasing tickets needs for all your sporting events and concerts, stuff like that. Go to ticketsmarter.com. Type in code BIG for $10 off a purchase of $100 or more. Type in code BIG20 for $20 off a purchase of $300 more. I really appreciate you guys doing that. Again, hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, guys. Thank you. On this first edition of the Horns Haven Show, we will be talking about roster updates, the new numbers, weights, heights, and all that came out for the Texas football team. And there's a couple interesting players here, a couple interesting key factors that I wanted to discuss. And then we'll be getting back into the over and under win totals for current SEC teams. Texas, we will hit next week. For right now, hey, Jackson, thanks for being here. Hit that like button and subscribe as you have been and sharing it. Thank you for that. Let's jump into this. So roster updates. A couple of the names. We're going to start out with guys that just arrived on campus. One of them being Ryan Wingo, the 5-star from St. Louis, Missouri. 6'2", 208 pounds. He arrives on campus, checks out with what he had his senior year of high school. These are basically the exact measurements. I think he lost 2 pounds. I think that's the only difference here, guys. Ryan Wingo lost 2 pounds. From everything we've been hearing, he's a lot faster than anyone thought he would be. I think they clocked him at like 21.5 miles per hour. So he's almost pushing that 22 mile per hour club, which is insane for a freshman. He's basically got the same body type as an A.D. Mitchell, but he's faster. I don't think he's as agile. A.D. Mitchell's very good at getting in and out of cuts. I could be wrong. It's going to be fun to see, going to be fun to look at. I think he's going to get a lot of playing time along with a couple of these wide receivers that didn't play much last year, but I think he's the guy that arrives on campus, and it wouldn't shock me if he catches 20 to 30 passes this year for a couple hundred yards. I think that's fair to expect. If you look at Steve Sarkisian's track record at Alabama and at Texas, if he has a good wide receiver, he used them. Xavier Worthy got used a bunch his freshman year. Went for 1,000 yards in his freshman year. I don't think Ryan Wingo does that because that was more out of need, guys. And this room doesn't need that. They don't need a freshman to come in and do that. But I expect him 30 catches, 400 yards. Like, I think that's fully capable projections for Ryan Wingo, and I think there's a possibility that happens. But I'm really excited to watch him. I'm excited to watch Jonte Cook, who we'll talk about later, and the other guys that transferred in, like Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden. Next up, freshman. I think the guy that's going to make the biggest impact on the team freshman-wise is Colin Simmons. This is a game-changing edge, a guy that Texas hasn't had in a very long time coming out of high school. I think the last high school player that you could kind of put in this tier is Sergio Kindle. He's like one of the 10 highest recruited players in the history of Texas, and a guy that dominated when he stepped on campus. He was dominant when he was here. He would have been a dominant NFL player, obviously, if not for a motorcycle accident that caused a brain injury. So that's very unfortunate for him because he was so much fun to watch. He was probably the most fun player to watch on defense, maybe Earl Thomas. But guy was a freak. And I think Colin Simmons can come in and do what Sergio Kindle did through his career at Texas. I think he can be that guy. The last guy that we could even put in the same stratosphere as a Colin Simmons is Joseph Asai. And he was good, but I think Colin Simmons is going to be a better player. I really do. This guy has gained 15 pounds since arriving on campus. So 15 pounds, like a month and a half. He's up to 234 pounds. By the time he leaves, he'll be 255. He will be 255, 260, and he'll be like 90% muscle, 10% body fat. The guy's a freak. The guy's going to have, in my opinion, 5 to 7 sacks this year is what you expect as his freshman year in the SEC. Would not shock me if he's the SEC defensive player of the year as a freshman. Not like defensive player of the year, sorry, freshman of the year as a defender. I don't think he'll be that good, but I do think he can be the freshman defensive player of the year. So something to look forward there. 234 pounds. Like I said, he put on 15 pounds of muscle in a month and a half. I think he'll be up to 240 by the time the games kick off. So it'll be, I think, a great season for Colin Simmons. And then Xavier Filsaime comes in at 190. You ideally you'd like him to be about 205. I don't think he'll get that high this year. Um, but Derek Williams played at 190 and played pretty well as a true freshman. So I think Xavier Filsaime can do that as well. Long rangy safety, kind of like Derek Williams. I think if Texas is going to want to cover people, let's say it's 3rd and 8, it's a passing down. I think you're going to see Xavier Filsaime, Andrew Makuba, Derek Williams, and Jade Barron as the 4 main guys at safety and nickelback. And you also see on the outside Malik Muhammad and Terrence Brooks. I think those 5-6 guys will be fantastic in coverage on 3rd and obvious passing situations, or just obvious passing situations in general. I expect Xavier Filsaime to get a decent amount of reps. I don't think you'll see the amount that Derek Williams got last year because, again, this is an Xavier Worthy situation where they need Xavier Filsaime to come in and be this guy that starts right away like Derek Williams. But do I think he gets a lot of reps? Yeah, I think you're talking 30% of he'll get 30% of the safety reps. And I think he'll do good back there. I think he's a long rangey guy. Don't really want to use him in the run game because he doesn't have the weight, but I expect big things from him. Another guy that wasn't talked about a lot, and I didn't even mention him last week when we talked about offensive line, but Daniel Cruz. This guy is a 4-year starter in high school. Guys, that is unheard of for an offensive lineman. Unheard of to be a 4-year varsity starter. Fantastic that you have that. You have that experience with him. And then he gained 12 pounds. He's 307 pounds. The starting center next year is going to be Jake Majors. Jake Majors is 315 pounds. For a freshman to come in at 307 pounds and also have that experience, it would not shock me at all if Daniel Cruz is the next center at Texas. If he comes in and next year he is the starter. And if Jake Majors gets hurt and if he plays well, they may just leave him in because this guy, to me, is going to jump off when he plays. I just have that feeling. I have that gut feeling. If someone can play 4 years starting as a freshman at the center position, first off, you have to be smart to do that because you're in control of that offensive line. You have to mesh well with your quarterback, so you probably have a good personality to get along with guys pretty well. I think he's the next great center at the University of Texas. So Daniel Cruz up 12 pounds to 307 pounds. It's going to be interesting to watch his career at Texas. And then Jordan Washington, a guy that most recruiting sites had as a high 3-star, low 4-star. 6'4", 225, super athletic guy at the tight end position. I think you're going to see more Amari Nyblack out of him than Gunnar Helm. I could see him getting some reps this year. Honestly, though, I think it's going to be Gunnar Helm, Amari Nyblack probably getting 40 to 45%, and then Juan Davis and him might get 5 to 10% of those tight end reps. We know Steve Sarkisian loves 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends, so you're going to see a lot of that. But he also, made the point in his final in the last signing day, which was about a month ago now, that he's willing to adapt. And if the wide receivers are the strong suit, then let's go for 4x1 or even 5 wide receivers and no running backs. I think that's a possibility with this team. That is their strength. And if Quinn Ewers can take that next step, I'd like to see this as well. But I expect Jordan Washington to get some reps this year, especially if an injury occurs. And I think he's going to have a good career here at Texas. So guys coming back, let's talk about them. Savion Red is the one that jumped off for everyone. The man is 5'9.5" and weighs 243 pounds at running back. I don't know if he's going to stay at running back. To me, those numbers say, like, I'm bulking up, and if I can't get reps, I'm moving to linebacker, and the guy's a good enough player to where I could see him be a decent linebacker. But we'll see. If not, maybe he'll be a short yardage back. Maybe he'll do a little bit of both. I don't know. He always seemed like a team player to me. Whenever you saw the sideline, he was always celebrating everything. So I think he's a guy that sticks around and just does whatever role he needs to, and makes a little bit of money at Texas. And honestly, probably gets in like analyst type of game at Texas too. I could just see his whole life being at Texas. Honestly, he seems like that type of guy. But up to 243 pounds. I think he's a short yardage running back here or may switch to linebacker. It's interesting. 5'9", 243 is insane. Anthony Hill, another guy that's up 15 pounds from last year, guys. He's at 243 as well. 6'4", 243. Insane athleticism, insane agility, insane speed. The sky is the limit for this guy. This guy can be the second best linebacker in the history of Texas football. I'm not going to put him Derek Johnson level because that's next level type stuff because Derek Johnson produced in the pros as well. But can Anthony Hill be the second best linebacker to ever come to the 40 acres? Absolutely can. And I think there's a possibility for that. I think this is good weight. And I think David Benda, the other linebacker, also put on weight. So I think they're putting more emphasis on these guys and saying, hey, listen, we don't have Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat to protect you guys are going to have to put on a little extra cushion and get downhill and thump people coming out of the backfield, because without Tavondre Sweat and without Byron Murphy, the linebackers have to be better in the run game this year. I think David Benda definitely is up to that. He's already a decent run stopper, and he's gained weight. Anthony Hill, hopefully with this weight, and we see this sometimes too, guys. What does worry me, you put on weight too quickly at that age, you start to get some of these injuries, especially tendon type injuries or soft tissue injuries. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen, because that's the only thing that can derail this guy from an NFL career, in my opinion. But that is good weight, and hopefully he can come downhill and start hitting people, along with taking people out of the backfield and covering them as well, like he could always do with that insane athleticism. And I'd like to see him more on the edge now, especially with gaining the weight, because he's got great bend, and he was a decent pass rusher, and he really didn't know what he was doing last year. I think he had 4.5 sacks, and he was basically just all athleticism. If you give him a move or two with this extra weight, he can probably get 6 or 7 sacks. The next guy up is a transfer, Kendrick Blackshire. Guys, 261 pounds. He is up 28 pounds from what Alabama listed. I don't know if Alabama lied. I don't know if the man's on the juice. I don't know what's happening here, but 28 pounds from the beginning of last year this year is insane. I think his role is pretty clear. He is going to come downhill. He's going to hit people. He is your primary run guy at the linebacker position. If it's 3rd and 1, you're going to see him in. If it's 3rd and 2, you're going to see him in. If it's 3rd and 4 or under, I think you see him in. In short yardage situations, this is the guy you're going to have in. It would not shock me, too, if you see him play on the defensive line at some point, because he's just as heavy as our defensive ends at the linebacker position. So good depth. I think he's going to be good against the run. I think this basically eliminates anything he can do versus a tight end or running back in coverage. It's hard for me to see a guy at 261 go out and cover people at the linebacker position. If he's doing that, we're talking freak, an absolute freak. I just don't see that happening. But overall, it's good depth, and it helps the running game. Quinn Ewers, he is up 10 pounds, and I think that's a good thing. We saw him go from 215 to 195. Now he's up to 205. I think 205 to 210 is the perfect weight for him, especially because it's healthy weight. It's different. It's body recomposition, basically. He lost all his fat, and he's gaining muscle. Obviously, you're going to put on a little bit of fat, and that isn't bad either to protect yourself. But overall, I think this is the best he has looked. Hopefully, he plays his best this year in Quinn Ewers. And then 2 guys on the offensive line, guys that we wanted to see lose weight that I mentioned last week. Cam Williams is down 9 pounds. I think he needs to still lose 5 to 10 more pounds to get to the weight I want him to be at. He is at 360. I think 350 at 6'6" is plenty good enough for the right tackle position. So he needs to drop another 10 pounds. And I think he can do that during camp, guys. I mean, especially during when the summer workouts and conditioning come, he's going to drop that weight. So I think he'll get down to 350 by the time the season kicks off. Or if you want to stay at 360 but gain muscle and lose fat too, that's a possibility that I would be fine with. But 360 is the heaviest he should be. And then Devon Campbell or DJ Campbell, he is down 12 pounds since the beginning of last year. He's playing in the 330s. I think that is perfect for him at the guard position. He's a really good athlete, and I think this is going to make him a better athlete. To me, this is the guy with the highest NFL upside. I know Kelvin Banks is getting that talk, and he should as a top 10 pick going into next year at the left tackle position. But I think Devon Campbell has the highest upside. I think he's got all pro type upside at the guard position. And if he can just keep his weight in check and work hard, there's been talks of like them just saying, stick with Kelvin Banks, work with Kelvin Banks. Kelvin Banks will push you. And he's been doing that. So if he continues to do that, I think, honestly, this could be Devon Campbell's last year on the 40 acres. Like, if he has a really good season, I could see him declaring for the NFL draft and being a 1st or 2nd round pick next year. So those are the roster updates. Actually, one last thing. Jonte Cook switches to number 1, Xavier Worthy's old number, and he's up 8 pounds. So he is taking on the responsibility, basically, of Xavier Worthy. He's like, I want the number. I want the responsibility. Let's do this thing. Props to him. If he can live up to those expectations, if he can be 90% of the player Xavier Worthy was with all these other guys we brought in, I think 9 wins is the floor for this team next year. I think 8 is that right now, but if Jonte Cook hits, Colin Simmons hits, I think you're talking minimum 9. I'm talking injuries happening too in my head, and I think 9 would still be the minimum. So Jonte Cook, I like that he's willing to take that pressure of Xavier Worthy's number. Let's see what he does with it, guys. It's going to be interesting. Again, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out the channel. Monday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time here on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football on the SEC channel and the Texas channel, both under Mark Rogers TV. This is the first edition of the Horns Haven Show with your host, Matthew Miller. I will be here again Monday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're not done. We're going to go through 4 more SEC teams and their wins and overs under totals and what they went last year. Guys, as you've seen on the main channel, Mark talks about +3, -3. So we'll talk about that as well. I believe I have 3 SEC teams different in that category, either winning 3 more games or losing 3 more games. Auburn being one of them, winning 9 games, which is 3 more than last year. Oklahoma losing 3 more games from 10 to 7. And then Alabama, I have them only winning 8 games. They won 11 last year. So those are the 3 teams right now. And this next group, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have any of these teams meeting those specifications, but we're going to talk about them anyways. And I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to start with Arkansas, guys. We're going to start with Arkansas, and let me get to you right now. Share screen. Arkansas football. Here we go, guys. So Arkansas, guys, they start out with UAPB Golden Lions. Obviously a win. So you're at 1 win right there. Their over-under, guys, is 5.5. Let me actually go and flash this up on the screen real quick for you guys. Over-under 5.5. There we go. Okay, 5.5 wins for Arkansas. Next up, Oklahoma State. I have a loss there. On the road, if this was at home, I would give them a win because I think, honestly, they're pretty comparable teams. I think Oklahoma State would basically beat Arkansas if they were in the SEC this year, but I'm giving them a loss since it's on the road. UAB, I'm giving them a win. And then we go through a gauntlet, in my opinion, the hardest part of the schedule, and they are going to see a lot of losses. At Auburn, loss. Versus Texas A&M, loss. Versus Tennessee, loss. And guys, Tennessee's one of those teams, when we get to them next week, because they're going to be one of the 4 teams remaining, I don't know what to think of that team. That team could go 5-7 next year. They could go 10-2. Nothing would shock me with them, but I'm going to give Arkansas a loss here because I think Sam Pittman ultimately gets fired this year. I think they're looking for a new coach. LSU, loss. At Mississippi State, this is where they break that 4-game losing streak and they win. At Ole Miss, I'm going to give them a loss. They're going to lose to Texas off of a bye week. As a Texas fan, this is the game I'm most confident in next year. This was Sark's baptism by fire. When he went into Fayetteville his first year, he got embarrassed. They ran for over 300 yards on us. If there was a game I'd bet Texas wins next year, I would bet this game. If I'd bet one game, I'd bet this game. They're not going to lose to Arkansas. Arkansas takes the L here. They beat Louisiana and they lose to Missouri. They went 4-8 last year. Their over-under is 5.5. I'm going under. I think they go 3-9. Can they get to 5? I think they can. I just don't see a world where you get to 6. Okay, you're not beating Missouri on the road. Could you beat Ole Miss at home? I guess. Could you beat Texas at home? I guess. Could you beat LSU at home? I guess. But are you going to win all 3 of those? No. So let's give you 1. So that's 1. So you're at 4. Could you beat Tennessee at home? Yes. I think at best you split between Texas A&M and Tennessee. That gets you to 5. I guess you could get to 6. If you split between Auburn and Oklahoma State, you're at 6. To me, if they get to 6, I think Sam Pittman should keep his job because that is the absolute best I could see this team doing. The worst, I honestly think I have him at the worst. I think 3-9 is the worst. I don't see him doing any worse than 3-9, and that's what I have him. So I'm very low on this team. Let me know in the comments if you think I am right or not. We're going to stop sharing there. Like I said, 3-9, under 5.5 wins for Arkansas. And again, I'm going to do this again later down the road, guys, when the rosters are more set. But right now, I just think Arkansas goes under that. I think they go 3-9. I think it may be a time to start a new era in Fayetteville. Time for them to get Jamie Chadwell. Yeah, that would not be a bad hire, Jackson. I think that would actually be a pretty good hire for Arkansas. Because let's be honest here, if he does well there, that's a pit stop. He's not staying there. Arkansas is just not a job where you stay. It really isn't. No offense to him. It's a job where if you can win 9-10 games in a bigger SEC or Big Ten school comes calling, you take it. It's like a middle tier job. It's like the 25th best job in the country. And that's what I'm saying. If they go 6-6 in the new SEC with that schedule, I think that's a good year. I am at 3-9. I could see 4-8 again. Again, to me, that +3 or -3 criteria, could they? I don't see them only winning 2 games because you have 2 gimmies on the schedule. So you're telling me you're going to go winless in the SEC? I don't see that happening. Um, and then to win 7 games, possibly that, but I don't see it. Like I said, I think 6-6 is basically the best you can be. So let's go to the next one, guys. That is going to be Ole Miss, a team that everyone is high on, and I can see why. The only issue I see with Ole Miss is Lane Kiffin has yet to win any big games at Ole Miss. So you guys can see that. Let's switch Arkansas here and put in Ole Miss. Over under 9.5 wins, guys. It's a big number. There's a lot of big numbers here. Missouri, Ole Miss, Texas, and Georgia all have, and LSU have 5 teams have 9.5 or over. So they play Furman. That is a win. They're going to start out with a lot of wins here, guys. Middle Tennessee win at Wake Forest, which is crazy that they're, I guess it's not crazy. If you look in the grand scheme of things, Wake Forest and Ole Miss, I think obviously Ole Miss is a better program, but they're not much better. So they're on the road. They win that game. They start out 3-0, and they're going to win 3 more games in a row. They're going to beat Georgia Southern at home. They're going to beat Kentucky at home, and they're going to beat South Carolina at home, and that sets up an undefeated matchup. I'm going to let you know a little sneak peek. LSU, I also have undefeated going into this game. So you have LSU at 5-0, Ole Miss at 6-0 going into Death Valley. This will be a top 10 matchup, guaranteed. It's going to be a hell of a game. I'm taking LSU to win this game. Looking at LSU's roster and what they lost, I thought I was going to hate them, and we'll get into them next. Turns out I don't, and I think Ole Miss suffers a loss here, and they are 6-1 now. Next up, you have a bye, and then you get Oklahoma at home. Because of the bye, you win that game. You are 7-1. At Arkansas, 8-1. Georgia, I can't do it. I just can't. Show me a game where Kirby Smart has won at Ole Miss where he shouldn't have. Show me a game, and this is going to be one of them. I don't think they're going to be favored in this game. I don't think they'll be favored at LSU. I think they lose both the games they should. So there you go. So they're going to lose to Georgia. They're going to beat Florida and Mississippi State. You're going to end the year 10-2. You're going to go 10-2 in back-to-back years. You're going to go you're going to go over the 9.5 wins. So I'm high on this team. I think 10-2 is fair. At best, you go 11-1. I don't see you beating both Georgia and LSU. If you beat Georgia and LSU, you're 12-0. You're going to be the number 1 seed heading to the college football playoff, and you're going to make me eat all these words, Lane Kiffin. You're going to make me eat all these words, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think you finish 10-2. If you finish 11-1, it's a hell of a season. If you finish 10-2, in my opinion, honestly, you did slightly above what you should. I think 9-3 is like the floor for this team, unless catastrophic injuries happen. This is a very easy schedule. So I think you go 10-2, and I think you go over. And I think there's a chance you're playing in that Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta for the SEC championship. So 10-2 for Ole Miss. They don't meet that +3 or -3 criteria. They couldn't meet the +3 because there aren't 13 games. They could meet the -3. They're not only winning 7 games next year. So I'm going to have them as the same as last year and over the 9.5 wins, guys. Next up, we are going to talk about Vandy, the worst team in the SEC, and I expect them to be the worst team in the SEC again. Let's share that screen again one more time. Well, 2 more times, actually. We got 1 more team. There we go. Whoa, let's get rid of this. Vanderbilt. Okay, so Vanderbilt. Sorry. Going to Vanderbilt real quick. Sorry, guys. Virginia Tech. I'm actually high on Virginia Tech in the ACC. They're going to be number 1 in returning production next year, guys. I'm going to have Vanderbilt losing that game. So you start out 0-1. Guess what? You win your next 2 games. You beat Alcorn State and you beat Georgia State. Unfortunately, that is going to start a 3-game losing streak. At Missouri, loss. If you lose versus the bye week, I might have you losing versus the bye, but you're going to not win a game or lose a game there. You're going to lose to Alabama, and you're going to lose at Kentucky. You're going to beat Ball State, so you have 3 wins. Unfortunately, that is going to be the last win of the season. Versus Texas, that's going to be a home game for Texas. I'm hoping to be there October 26th. Texas wins that game in a blowout. Auburn wins at Auburn. South Carolina, I could see Vanderbilt winning this game. This is the one game on the schedule in the SEC that I could see Vanderbilt winning. I'm not going to have them winning, though. Could they? Yes. They're going to lose. So that's another loss. Bye week at LSU, not winning that game. And then at Tennessee, not winning that game. So I have Vanderbilt at 3-9. They went 2-10 last year. Their over-under, guys, is 2.5. I have them over. I think they win 3 games. I think Vanderbilt wins 3 games, goes 3-9. But I think the best they could possibly do is 4-8. The worst they could do is 1-11. So they don't meet the +3 or -3 criteria. There's no way they win 5 games with the schedule, and you obviously can't go into the negative win category. So they're not going to meet that criteria either. I have them at 3-9. The last team in the SEC or today that we're going to have is LSU. And again, guys, can you please hit that like button and subscribe down below? It really helps out the channel. I appreciate that. Let's go to LSU over 9.5. Another team, like I said, one of 5 teams in the SEC with 9.5 wins or more, projected by Vegas. And let's go to their schedule real quick. So LSU, guys, they lose a lot. They lose the Heisman winner in Jaden Daniels. They lose Malik Neighbors. They lose Brian Thomas Jr., who I think is going to be actually better than Malik Neighbors in the NFL. And they lose Mason Smith off the defensive line. They bring in Baker, the defensive coordinator from Missouri. I think that's a great hire. They bring in Bo Davis, unfortunately, Texas's defensive line coach. Great hire. I expect their defense to be better. Do I think you can be one of the worst defenses in the country, become one of the best in 1 year? Absolutely not. Do I think they can be average? Yes. And if they are average and the offense can just stay good with this schedule, I think this team can win 10, 11 games. So we're going to jump into it. USC. This is a hard one for me to predict. I have no idea what to expect from USC next year. I could see 10-2 for USC. I could see 5-7 from USC. They are all over the map. I'm more confident in Brian Kelly as a head coach than Lincoln Riley. I'm more confident in Garrett Nussmeier over whoever the hell starts with USC. So I'm taking LSU to win that game. And then they play Nichols. You win that game. You're at South Carolina. I think South Carolina is one of the 4 worst teams in the SEC. You win that game. UCLA, no Chip Kelly. Deshaun Foster steps in as the head coach. No idea what to expect there, just like USC. They're going to win that game. South Alabama, they win that game. They go into the bye. Like I said, they are 5-0 going into a gigantic matchup with 6-0 Ole Miss. I think they win. They're at home. I think it's a big game. I don't trust Lane Kiffin in big games. I do trust Brian Kelly in big regular season games. I don't trust him in big playoff bowl games, championship games, but I trust him in regular season. They win this game. They are 6-0. Unfortunately, I do have an upset. I do have them winning this next game at Arkansas, guys. Like I said, I don't think Arkansas is that good. I think they're 3-9, so they do win this game. Here's the upset at Kyle Field, Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M beats them. They've had their number even when LSU is good, so I'm going to have them a win there. They go into a bye. They are going to beat Alabama here, guys. And that will give them, 6, 7 wins there. And then they play at Florida. That is a win. They play Vanderbilt. That is a win. And then I have them versus Oklahoma, and I think that's a loss, guys. So I have LSU at 10-2. I think this is a very easy schedule. If this schedule was a little bit harder, I might have them be like an 8-14. But I mean, you play Ole Miss and you play Oklahoma and Alabama. I don't know what to expect from USC and UCLA. If you're talking about an average USC team from the past couple of years, I'm definitely taking LSU. If you're talking USC from a couple years ago when they went off, but that was with Caleb Williams, I would take USC. But I just think LSU has more talent. I think they're better coached, and think they have less question marks. So I'm going LSU there, and then UCLA. I just don't think it's going to be very good. I think they're like a 4-8 team. So I have LSU at 10-2, and I have them over the 9.5 wins. So LSU, I would take the over with 10 wins, and that's another team that meets the over. I think there's a good chance, guys, that Missouri, Ole Miss, LSU, Georgia, and Texas all go over, and they surprise people. Like, I don't think many people would have them go over that 9.5 wins, but I think they might. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and rejoin you guys. I thought LSU Arkansas would be a rivalry week instead of LSU Oklahoma. Yeah, that is kind of weird. Um, but then again, is LSU and Arkansas really even that much of a rivalry, Jackson? I mean, it's a rivalry, but it's nothing huge. But it's definitely obviously it's a bigger rivalry game than LSU Oklahoma. Honestly, if Texas didn't play Texas A&M, I could see LSU Texas being a rivalry because the coaching staffs have been going at it honestly over recruits. The fans don't really like each other, especially with that last game in Austin, and we never got to go down to LSU to play that game when we were supposed to. But I have LSU at 10-2 and going over that 9.5. So that is going to do it for this first edition of the Horns Haven Show here on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We will be back next Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below and share it out with your friends, family, neighbors, churchgoers, whoever you wanted to. Thank you guys for being here. Again, hit that like button and subscribe, and go over to ticketsmarter.com. Type in code BIG for $10 off a purchase of $100 or more, and type in code BIG20 for $20 off a purchase of $300 more. Thank you guys. Have a good night, and hook 'em.